Okay, here we go.
You cannot change. You will always be the monster.
The Raztopia special. That is not the one I want to do.
Every time I see
But
myself dressed up as the mime character, it kind of throws me a little bit. I'm like, hey, that's me.
Whereas I was just trying to find something fun to do for the commercial for your new book. But let's get started.
With your hair down and everything.
Yeah, back when I had that long ass hair. I mean, I'm actually growing it back out now to that length, like currently. I've decided I'm not cutting it again. I'm going to let it grow right down in the middle of my back like it used to because I miss it, actually.
It gives me the Crow vibes. I don't know.
Yeah, you can't really see the tattoo, really, because it's kind of messed up, but it actually says it can't rain all the time.
Nice.
It was actually something my great aunt used to tell me. She said, when it rains, it pours, but it can't rain all the time. And then that movie came out with It Can't Rain All the Time, and I'm like, hey, someone else has heard that phrase.
That rocks. Welcome to Corpse Garden Chronicles. I am Jenny. Well, Friday. That's Melanie D. And of course, we get to have the awesome Rasty Slasher for our Raztopia special. And we all three are looking forward to the Dark Dreams anthologies coming out and his Silence is Crimson 2 Homecoming. And it's going to be so much fun.
Really excited, man. I really am. I may not see it, but I'm super excited on the inside for sure.
Can you tell I'm excited with all the stuff I put up and made?
Yes.
You want to mention the places that they can see the other side of this video going on?
Okay, guys. Everybody can find it on the Owlite Network YouTube Live. We are on the Owlite Network Twitch Live. And of course, on mine and Mel's Facebook page, Corpse Garden Chronicles, we are live there as well.
And I've got a link to that on my normal Facebook, directly to you guys' Facebook. So,
yes. So, yeah, that's where we're hiding, but we're trying not to hide too well.
Okay.
We're not like hiding seek Bigfoot champion like level at this point. We're trying to, get out there.
Has anybody in your TikTok heard of Raz?
Have any of y'all heard of Raz T Slasher?
Don't feel bad. I haven't heard of me either.
Well, so far I have tons of people joining, but nobody's really commented.
Oh, it's the lurkers, man.
Yeah.
I was just happy you knew who Friday Baldwin was.
Of course.
Because, yeah, as you can tell, I made a whole entire personality on her. So yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I was between that and Dragnet for your name.
Well, yeah, I loved Dragnet. I watched every episode. I loved that Potter from MASH was on it, or it was him on MASH. I don't know
Yep.
which came first. I just watched both back to
MASH
back
did.
at the same time.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then there was the Dragnet movie with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd, which is brutal.
Oh
Love
yeah,
that one.
I haven't found much that Dan Aykroyd has done that I don't like.
Have you ever seen that weird movie he did called Nothing But Trouble, where he plays a judge with like really heavy makeup?
Hmm.
I love that. That's his weirdest movie by far, and I love it. I love that movie, man. Humpty and Digital Underground's also in that movie. Now that I think about it.
Hey, that's cool. So, how many has anybody got Nightmare Whispers yet in the chat?
Again, don't worry if you don't. I don't either.
Yeah, they don't seem very talkative today.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, because like I said, there's tons of people that's joined, but like nobody said any comments this time around.
Okay,
Oh.
fine then.
They're
Either
nervous.
way,
They're nervous because Raz is here too. That's what
Oh, don't be nervous, man. Just smoke some more, have a drink, whatever it is you do at 3 o'clock during 3 p.m. Eastern.
yeah, that'd be good. So we've come here to celebrate the Raz, and but we've been continuing our Nightmare Whispers Chronicles. And in the first book and the last book of the trilogy, he has 2 stories. But since it's only 2, I will be reading from the Dashing from Death. He changed the name of it twice from
Did for good reason.
Riverside Chronicles, and we get to enjoy them reading. So, how about we? Since I'm going first, what were your was there anything cool you were thinking, or anything awesome you wanted to tell us, or anything at all about the Dashing from Death?
So this is the second version of it as well. The very first version of the story. When I wrote it, it was for I think it was the Night Shift anthology. It was a day shift, night shift, horror for hire anthology is what it was. I met this really awesome guy named Kyle through it was a Reddit / Discord group called Right that was a part of for a really long time. Still very much support them. Dell's actually still a mod over there. And I kind of got to know him for a little while at first, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm doing this anthology." And that was technically actually the first anthology that I ever got to do in my whole life. That was the very
Wow.
first one I got. Yeah. So it's very near and dear to me. The original version is a lot longer. A lot of other things kind of happen in the story. But I was young as a writer. I was still learning, how to end things properly. You know what I'm saying? Because it was a very much longer than it needed to be. So when I went back and revisited it for the collection, like I did with a lot of the stories in the collection, I got a chance to kind of go and add some additional details, but also change where the story ended. Because the new ending, I like it where it stops. It leaves kind of an air of mystery. There's a lot more that could or could not happen as a result. I told too much of the ending, I think, the time before. But this is based on the fact that when I originally wrote this, which was like pre-pandemic / beginning of the pandemic, my wife and I were doing Amazon, DoorDash, all those things, delivering packages. And we would have to go to a lot of really weird places to deliver packages at, just weird places. And at one point, in the span of like a week, we got sent to 2 very weird places that spawned this story. One was a cemetery. And we got there at dusk, and the actual address led us to a certain row in a grave. And this was back at the time one of Stephen King's big collections was coming out, and I'd already delivered like 1 million of them, so I knew about how heavy it was. So I'm pretty sure it was one of his. And the directions were just to leave it there. And I'm like, okay, no. What the hell's going on? So I call support, and they're like, yeah, we did not just send you to a cemetery. I'm like, no. Look at my GPS marker. You can see it. They're like, oh my God. And the instructions, what do they say? What are they having you do? I'm like, they're wanting me to leave it on a particular grave. And they're like, oh no. Just go home. And right as they said that, it started to storm. So here I am, me and Michelle are trapped in this cemetery. They're about to close the gates because it's dusk and it's got gates, and we're like, wait, don't. We're still in here. So we had just enough time before they closed the gates to get back out again. And then a week later, actually, like I think it was like 5 or 6 days later, we delivered this normal neighborhood we usually delivered to, and there was this address. Like, this address doesn't exist. We go where it's supposed to be, and there's just a giant, like a couple empty lots. When we look, and the number for the address was spray painted on the top of a sewer grate.
Oh,
So I call and I'm like, man, listen. I have to report this strange place that you just sent me to, and I hear the guy's voice. He sounds familiar. He's like, "Wait a minute, didn't we just send you to a graveyard earlier this week?" I'm like, yes, okay, same guy. You see where I'm coming from. First it's a graveyard, now you guys are having me deliver to Pennywise. What's going on with the GPS system? And that just kind of spawned this weird story. Tie-in also, the graveyard in this story is a very famous graveyard around here called Dayton Memorial Park Cemetery. There is actual cult activity. There is known cult activity. You'll actually see people out in robes and stuff at different times of the year. Like, so this was just kind of me connecting multiple things and multiple events and things in life and just figuring out how I can do a story out of it, more or less.
Now you got me worried because I've been doing Uber delivery and Instacarting here lately. Now you got me worried.
I know those too. Weird things can happen. Yeah, Michelle still does the door dashing, but like weird things can happen out there, man. Like you can go to some weird places sometimes.
Because too, some of the places I've delivered out here is like you go down 3 different dirt roads that has no name. You know, now you got me freaking out over here.
Yep, we got some smaller towns we deliver to sometimes that are like that too. It's just. I ruined an entire car. Got half of my transmission yanked down because this guy had this giant. It was like probably a 2-foot dip in the center of his long ass. It was almost a mile-long driveway, and didn't tell anybody about it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, you got to watch out for stuff like that. But yeah, it's a delivery story, but gone wrong.
And all I was afraid of was like dropping signal and not being able to figure out where I was going, and now I'm afraid of other things to add on to it. Nice.
So a lot of your programs have this thing where you can press a button to download offline maps. So that way, if you do lose signal while you're out, you'll still be able to see where you are.
Oh, nice. I need to check on that then.
Yeah, definitely. Please do that. Because we ran into that ourselves a couple times.
Okay, guys, that's good advice for all delivery drivers. Okay.
Yeah, beware of cemetery deliveries.
Yeah, I mean, definitely beware of cemetery deliveries.
Okay, I am going to start, and then we'll talk more about what we think afterwards, because I don't think Mel has read it yet. Have you? Have you read Dashing Story yet? No? Okay, we'll find out what you think afterwards.
Yeah. Look, I'm sorry. They added me to my course a week late, and everything was like I entered the course a week late.
Gotcha. So, bad reader.
Yeah. So I've been behind.
I'm not mad. If you're doing this with me, we're good.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Exactly. Remember that, honey bunny? Okay. Rob and I's schedule has been crazy lately. We've been pulling so many app-based shifts for DoorDash lately to make ends meet and save it for the wedding. We spent every weekend filming to get our horror production company off the ground too. So it didn't leave us with much time to relax. Things have been stressful lately. A few nights ago, we got a late night ping to deliver some burgers to a weird road called Endicott that was known for a lot of various hauntings. It was a win-win situation for us, or so we initially thought. I turned on the radio on low for some background noise while we picked up the food and headed to the location. Rob looked over at me with a grin and spoke as we turned on Endicott. As many times as I've been down this way, it still creeps me out. I mean, there's the butcher's house, the witch's steps, the hitchhikers, the ghost car that chases people, and I would swear that trees seem so much closer to the road at night. I just smiled and agreed with him. I know what you mean. It's kind of crazy that so many things happen on one brief stretch of road. There's got to be some seriously bad juju around here for so many things to have happened. Rob, of course, quickly agreed with me. Oh, for sure. I think this address is the caretaker's house at that little cemetery on the road. It's the only graveyard nearby that I can think of where you're allowed to drive through at night. They have this super weird section called Babyland where the children are buried. There's this one grave where there's an actual crib railing that surrounds it. It's creepy as fuck. Well, that's not creepy or anything, I responded with a quick, nervous chuckle. He grinned and patted my knee as we headed down the road. I cranked up the local station and started jamming out to some Bon Jovi. The closer we got to the cemetery, the more the radio crackled, which which made little sense considering we're right in the middle of the station broadcast range. So I figured there was some interference. I checked other stations, but they seemed to be fine. I switched back to the original station since it was the only station I cared for, and put up with the static for a little while longer. We're about a mile from the cemetery when the strangest thing happened. The music just stopped, and there was dead air on the radio. The static crackled and soon gave way to a voice talking. And as the darkness descends upon the lands, there shall come the time of blood. Rob glanced over at me with a raised brow before looking back at the road and commenting, "Are we listening to some kind of religious station or something?" I double checked the radio before responding. No, still on the 104.7 W2 WTUE. Before either of us could say any more, the voice started up again. "The Dark Lord shall awaken from the sunken city of Relea when the stars are right. He shall bring us peace through madness and devour the non believers." Raz, I suck at this language. Flui, Mengwa, Cthulhu, Rela, Wagnala Fung. In the house of Rela did Cthulhu wait streaming. I burst out in laughter. Clearly, someone had a sense of humor. Rob chanced a glance at me and the road as he drove. "What's so funny?" I couldn't believe you've never heard of the great Cthulhu before. "Well, they're talking about Cthulhu. It's this weird old god that looks like a giant fucked up human dragon hybrid creature with tentacles. He's supposed to drive everyone completely insane and looks upon him and eats people pretty much. He's from the H.P. Lovecraft mythos. It's huge in geek pop culture." The voice spoke through the never ending static once again. "On that day, our loved ones shall be returned to us from death. We shall welcome them in our arms as they usher in the new era. We shall embrace their rotting flesh and cracking bones. All hail our Lord and Savior, the great Cthulhu." The voice was joined by a chorus of others. "All hail the great Cthulhu." We were only a few blocks away from the cemetery now. The static was clearing and the closer we got. What we heard next was the strangest thing of all. "Soon our chosen sacrifices shall be upon us. Even now they sit in a car having a cigarette just down the road. We shall rend their flesh and spill their blood upon the sacred earth so that Cthulhu may bless us with the ultimate knowledge that only madness can yield." Rob and I looked at each other, terror marring each of our features. We pulled the car over to the side of that old country road. We sat there in silence, just continuing to stare between another, and the radio as the static crackled and seemed to exhibit a life of its own inside the car. Eventually, Rob broke the silence. I am thinking maybe we should turn around and go home, babe. I'll take the hit for the non delivery. I considered his words for a moment. I'm freaked out too, but there has to be a logical explanation for this. We make horror films, for fuck's sakes, man. This kind of stuff just doesn't exist outside of movies. It's probably just someone on cast or crew playing a prank on us. With all the pranks we pull all of them, it wouldn't surprise me. Besides, we really need the extra money right now. Rob sighed and nodded a bit, then started the car and put it in drive as he spoke. Whatever you say, Aaron, just remember, I was against this. Investigating spooky shit gets people killed in the movies. I punched him playfully in the arm as we drove. As we made it through the entrance to the cemetery, a voice came over the radio once more, dissolving the incessant static in its wake. They're close now, brothers and sisters. Ready your weapons and hide where you can. The second we see them, we shall yank them from the car and deliver them unto death. All hail the great Cthulhu! The other voices chimed in once more. All hail the great Cthulhu! Rob applied pressure to the brake, brought us to a stop, and glanced at me nervously. You know, it's not too late to turn back. We can still probably get out of here before something fucked up happens. Let's just go home, watch some Netflix or something. I rolled my eyes at him, pecked him on the cheek. Your cowardice isn't very sexy, Rob. We filmed these sort of things. You'd think this wouldn't be any more than writing fuel for you. Rob raised a brow as he spoke. I like to write spooky shit, not live it. There's a distinction between the two, you realize. I chuckled faintly and responded to him. Come on, don't be such a pussy. We'll do one lap around the place, make sure it's safe, deliver the food, and get the hell out. Rob sighed, took his foot off the brake, shifting into pump the gas gingerly. The static on the radio increased in volume without either of us touching it. I must admit, my heart racing a little at this point. It was like we're going our very own. It's like we were getting our very own omniscient soundtrack. We'd made it about a quarter of the way through the graveyard and nothing had happened. The voice hadn't even turned yet. I was just about to point out how hilarious I was suddenly finding the situation to be when something small hit the windshield of our car. It took a few more times for us to realize that someone was throwing pebbles at us. Rob stopped the car again. We looked around through the windows to see if we could spot anyone. There was no one there, with nowhere to go but forward. We started moving it. Now we were just past the halfway mark, and still we'd seen no one. A few more pebbles had hit the windshield by now. But that was about it. Maybe we're just slinging gravel up from the path as we were driving. As unlikely as that seemed, that's what I secretly told myself to keep me from freaking out. Rob wasn't saying a word, but I could see his knuckles had gone white on the steering wheel, presumably from gripping it so hard. I reached over, put my hand on his shoulder as we continued. Three quarters of the way through, we reached the Babyland section of that Rob had been talking about earlier. It was just as unsettling as he described it. Everywhere you look, there were cradled statues of once adorable little cherubs and giant statues of angels weeping. I pointed out the statue Rob had once again came to a halt. Whatever you do, don't blink. I got a nervous laugh out of Rob. We were huge fans of Doctor Who and the Weeping Angels and had always been amongst our favorite episodes. The other things about this section of the cemetery were all the toys surrounding the graves. We saw rusted Hot Wheels, old weather worn teddy bears, corroded Barbie dolls, and even some partially deflated balloons. I'd seen things memor like this at memorials on the side of the road and such. They were nothing compared to the magnitude of what we were seeing right now. Suddenly, a voice overcame the static again. There were the children now, so close. I can see them through the eyes of the angels as we speak. I can see them staring back at me. Rob is terrified, and Aaron seems confused. It won't be long now, my brothers and sisters. They will not escape. All hail the great Cthulhu! And before the chorus of as before, the chorus of voices responded just before the static resumed control. All hail the great Cthulhu! Rob again let go of the brake, hit the gas. This time there was more pressure than before. He wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible, and I easily agreed with his sentiment. Fuck the delivery at this point. We drove about as fast as you could on a narrow gravel path through a cemetery with an unnecessary amount of twists and turns. Finally, the entrance we'd come through was in sight in the distance. We were going to make it out of here, most likely laugh about the scare later. That's when we noticed a big truck entered the graveyard and stopped directly in the entrance. They just sat there as if blocking our way. Headlights came to life from behind us suddenly and almost blindingly, Rob via the reflection from the rearview mirror. They were closing in fast. The voice screeched over the radio in a single word, bursting through the static like Chuck Norris's fist through the chest cavity of his opponent. No! Before long, flowing onyx hooded cloaks began springing from behind gravestones and statues and started running directly at our car. Rob gritted his teeth together, leaned forward, and kept right on driving. He seemed determined to make it out of there. The sounds of metal scraping metal echoed through the night as the cloaked figures jammed their twisted blades. Pardon me, their twisted blades against our car as we passed. By now, my heart was beating so hard that I thought I'd have a heart attack for sure. There had to be at least 30 people trying to surround us, and Rob wasn't showing any signs of stopping. We're driving over graves and weaving through headstones, so he didn't have to sacrifice any speed around the pointless dips and turns. We were getting closer and closer to the truck, blocking the entrance now. I was terrified that we were going to drive right into it. Out of the blue, Rob shrieked, "Hold on!" I made sure my seat belt was secured, gripped the oh shit handle like my life depended on, and squeezed my eyes shut. Whatever he planned to do, I sure as hell didn't want to see it. I could feel the car speeding up, and then I felt that somewhat weightless sensation in my gut as I'm pretty sure all four of our tires left the ground. We came down hard. Our tires squealed as he jerked the wheel so hard that to the left that my head smacked against the window. I opened my eyes slowly and shook off the daze and noticed we were on the road in front of the cemetery now, hauling ass. I turned around in my seat to look behind us. The huge ass truck and three cars were giving chase. I reached over to squeeze Bob's shoulder as a voice again filtered through the static. Don't let them get away, brothers and sisters. Follow them to their home if you must. Our ritual depends on it. As a series of horn blasts truncated the voice before the static forced its way back into control, tears streamed down my face as I cried to Rob, "We can't go home, Rob. They'll kill us. We need to get somewhere safe." The truck was in the lead of those behind us and sped up to the point its front fender slammed against our bumper as our car jerked. Rob pushed the pedal down till it bottomed out. We were zipping down a back road faster than I'd ever been in a car before. I'd seen a lot of car chases on TVs and the movies. Hell, we'd even filmed a few, but none of us prepared me for the living one. The tension in the car was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Rob took a last minute turn so hard we damn near slid off the road into a tree. I looked around and realized we were back on Endicott again. Great, just what I needed at this point. The truck had been going too fast to make the turn, but the three cars had been behind it were still in hot pursuit. We flew past the witch's steps, cracked and stained with the blood of legends. I could vaguely see the estranged hitchhiker as his thumb up on the side of the road and didn't even seem phased as we powered on. Rob took another turn without warning, and we destroyed a mailbox through the power slide to get back to the pavement. Two of the cars didn't make it, but the third remained right on our tail. The voice cut through the static again violently. Pull back and rejoice, brothers and sisters. We have their license plate number and can easily track them down from that. We shall have them, mark my words. Their end is nigh. The static died altogether. Normal radio station removed its broadcast. It's the end of the world as we know it by REM. Rob slowed his pace to just 5 miles over the speed limit, and we kept driving in silence. We got about halfway home before he pulled over in a well-lit Walmart parking lot. There was a decent amount of people around for about 1 in the morning, which made me feel a little more comfortable. Rob looked over at me. His face had completely gone pale by now. He whispered as if still trying to find his voice. I don't know what to do, Aaron. We can't go home. He was right, and I knew it. I unbuckled my seatbelt and moved to bring him in a warm embrace as we swapped together. We stayed right there in the parking lot until the sun came up, too afraid to do or go anywhere else. Luckily, we didn't have classes today, so we called off work to figure out what to do. We killed some time in Walmart till we could start making some phone calls. We conned Scott into meeting us at the house where there was no way we were going there alone. It was a pretty lively neighborhood during the day, being close to the student housing for UD. When we arrived, we noticed a strange symbol burnt into our front lawn. I immediately recognized the fabled symbol of the cult of Cthulhu. We took some time filling Scott in on what we experienced. He seemed just as shocked as we were. We stocked up on some weapons, invited a few friends over under the guise of an all-night horror movie marathon, and waited for something to happen. So far, nothing crazy happened. Occasionally, I still hear the static over the radio on WTUE in weird places, but no more voices. We've since stopped doing late-night deliveries just to be safe, but something tells me we haven't seen the last of them. If you're doing app-based delivery jobs, be careful out there, and remember, you're only ever one burger away from oblivion. Only ever one burger away from oblivion. That fits it perfectly.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Initially, it went well beyond that point where they had not just Scott, but another friend showed up. In the middle of the night, the cultists showed up. There was this big battle in their house. They had to escape. One of them got their wallet. Like it was this whole big, like, it was almost double the length of what you read with the rest of it there. And I just thought to myself, why? That's too much detail. That's too much. Like I was just putting too much on the table for it. So I wanted to kind of pull back and leave the rest of it kind of, did they ever come back kind of a thing.
Oh, well, see, I thought great opening for a sequel. I mean,
And that's also always an option.
and you never know, it may get like extremely popular, especially with more people doing the Uber delivery and Spark and all
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I have been known to do weird sequels some people haven't read yet. In fact, you're reading one today that I'm working on a sequel for because enough people have bugged me about it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
see, that's why I wanted to read this one because Skinwalker's very popular on TikTok right now. Like,
Oh, definitely, definitely. And also, Endicott Road is a real road. It is the road that's right off the first haunt I ever worked for when I was 12, from the ages of 12 to 17. And I actually have a whole series of stories that I tell in like live action, like storytelling events that I've never actually told on any of the podcasts before, and that I've never written down. It's but the witch's step is a real thing. The hitchhiker, the car that chases you. Like, there's 5 legends for one fucking country road. It's one of the most haunted areas of Ohio, actually.
Oh, I
but
have no
it
doubt.
sounds like our mountain. Not that I want to start rumors again because I haven't lived on North Mountain in a long time, but it used to be like I remember hearing stories about like cult activity up on that mountain. Like you remember, Jonas used to talk about it all the time.
Oh yeah. And her thoughts about which people we know were part of that cult and various things.
Oh yeah, like I would specifically not like wander around alone on that mountain by myself because I heard those stories.
From what I know about that mountain and the information I have, you're probably right, and I would not have wandered. I wouldn't have wandered on it alone, to be honest with you.
Why
Yeah.
do you think we only did the walks during the day?
Yeah,
Why do you
Wise.
think I made sure both adults in the situation were aware which points we were going to?
right. Well, like I still like I might live like off the mountain now, but I still don't go up there at dark unless I absolutely have to. Like just because, well, between that and then the cats that sound like screaming dying women like in the woods and they're just bobcats, like it freaks me out.
I still love the fact that were feeding the one dog food and come on the porch.
Well, it's just a kitty to me until it actually like I will die from petting an animal. Like I know my future. Like I'm gonna die petting a fuzzy animal because I thought it was cute.
But seeing David doing the nope and waiting for a few minutes and being late to work because the kitty decided to come have a snack when he's supposed to be leaving for work. That was fun. So yeah, either way.
Did I die? No. Did he die? No.
At all.
Okay.
It's all good.
Before we move on, just one more reiteration. Dashers, make sure you're careful of what you're doing, no matter which food delivery service you're working for.
Dashers, Instacart, Uber, Spark, all of you. Like,
Yeah.
be
Please
careful.
be careful.
If you're gonna dash at night, bring someone with you because most companies don't mind if you've got a passenger, or at the very least, share your GPS location. Every phone service has an app where you can actually share your location with someone, so it's a very good idea to do that.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're
And
good.
the emergency say like it automatically most apps like I know like Uber and Instacart has them like the emergency share location.
Yep.
Like your emergency buddy.
Yep, I get those anytime my wife goes out to dash late. If I'm at the haunt, she'll go out. I always get the little emergency alerts and stuff from her.
Honestly, why I wear this too? The Fitbit.
Yep.
Because like if I ever get kidnapped, I'm swallowing this thing. Like
Oh yeah.
but it's waterproof. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Your
But I
throat
watch
won't, but
crime stories.
You can get these little miniature tracker things that are also waterproof that can also kind of connect to the Fitbit. It's really weird, but that they work. Air tags is what they're called. The
Yeah.
Apple AirTag things, but they've got them. Other services have them now too, and they're actually swallowable. Like they're so small, they're easy to swallow and pass through your system if you need it.
Yep. See, there you go.
which one of you two wanted to go next?
You tell me. I'll do whatever you would like. I'm the guest.
Okay. do you want to go or do we want the Raz to go?
It's up to Raz. I'll let him decide.
I'll go. I'll go.
Okay, fine
Okay.
then. Okay, we're going to mute and we're gonna enjoy you reading.
I'm just gonna read it, and then like last time, we'll talk about it after.
That is, I was hoping so, but I still love it when you read to us.
So, oh my god, I forgot how long I made this damn title. It's it pulls the fibers from my skin. It says I'll get the knife again. When I was a little girl, I had an imaginary friend. I think a lot of kids my age did. My imaginary friend's name was Fred. He wasn't some weird animal or creature or anything like that. Just a guy that wore a purple top hat and a bright green suit. We did all the usual things you expect, like tea parties, go on adventures, and sometimes he'd even read me my favorite stories. I didn't have any brothers and sisters. My parents worked a lot, so Fred quickly became my entire world. He was a funny man, always telling jokes. Even though I didn't always get the jokes, Fred would laugh so hard at himself that I couldn't help but laugh too. I remember one day I had just gotten off the bus on my way home from third grade, used my key to unlock the door, and found a note on the kitchen table, like I always did. It was from my mom, and she told me my dinner was in the fridge. I just learned how to use the microwave recently, and I was in that phase where every excuse to use it still excited me. I grabbed the container of leftover lasagna from the night before, threw it in the microwave for a few minutes, and poured myself a glass of milk. I made quick work of my meal and headed upstairs to my bedroom to do my homework. As usual, Fred was sitting on the bed waiting for me. I smiled at him, tossing my book bag on the floor and pulled out what I needed to get the work done. Today, it was all about the math, which I wasn't great at, but Fred was, so he gave me a hand. With his help, I finished it in no time, and we started our daily tea party where we would relax and discuss my day. I told him about how great my teacher was and about the art project we did with the popsicle sticks and the cotton balls. Then I told him about how little Jenny Dorner had pulled my pigtails at recess. Fred frowned at that and said, "This Jenny Dorner picks on you a lot, doesn't she?" I nodded with a bit of a shrug. "Yeah, she's really mean. She bullies an awful lot of kids." Fred didn't seem thrilled about that at all. "How about I come to school with you tomorrow so I can protect you?" I got super excited about that. Fred had never come to school with me before. I quickly agreed, and we went back to our tea party. Fred told me a story from when he was my age about the time his mom took him to the local candy store. I'd heard it a few times, but it was one of my favorites. We really didn't have any stores like that, or if we did, my parents never took me to it. He'd describe all his favorite candy and inevitably pull a piece from his pocket for me to eat. That day was a little chocolate turtle filled with caramel and nuts. It was so delicious. We played my new favorite board game, Sorry, for a while until mom and dad both came home from work. They checked to make sure I'd eaten and done all my work, which I had. We all sat and talked for a little while like we always did before I went to bed. It was the only real family time we had during the week. It took me a little while to fall asleep that night. I was so excited about Fred coming to school with me the next day. On the next morning, I woke up, and Dad filled a bowl of frosted flakes and milk for me. Fred and I waited at the bus stop quietly with a few other kids on my street, and before long, we were at school. I gave him the grand tour of my classroom, which consisted of the rack where I hung my coat, the cubby holes we used for homework, and nice little messages that our teacher, Miss Newman, would put in there. Then I showed him my desk. Bobby Darnell usually sat next to me in class, but he was absent that day, so Fred sat there. He seemed every bit as excited as I was when class got started. During the first part of the class, we started learning a little about the solar system. This really made me happy because I loved looking at the stars at night. I often dreamed of being the first woman in space when I grew up, living among the stars. Fred just kept smiling and looking around the room while Miss Newman was explaining the Milky Way. Timmy Warsher made a comment about candy bars, and just about everyone laughed, even Miss Newman. Eventually, it was time for lunch. So, Fred and I filed out with the class and headed to the cafeteria. I was probably one of the few people that liked cafeteria food because a lot of the other kids complained about it. Since it was Friday, it was pizza day, and that was my favorite. They always served it with fries. I opted for the chocolate milk over the juice. I ordered some to Fred, but he said he wasn't hungry. Once I was all done eating, we headed out to the playground for recess. I introduced Fred to the few friends I had. He smiled and waved to them, but they just giggled and looked a little confused. It didn't take long, though, for Ginny Dorner to corner me in the jungle gym with her little group of bullies. Fred frowned when Ginny pulled my pigtails again, and our friends laughed at me and called me names. When it was over, I turned around to commiserate with Fred, but he was gone. That's when I heard a series of pained screams echoing across our little concrete jungle. It came from over by the monkey bars. I rushed over to see what was going on and saw all our friends standing there, crying and shouting for Miss Newman, who came running and picked up Jenny to take her to the nurse. Part of the bone in Jenny's arm was exposed, having shredded through the skin in a few different locations. The white of those bones stained red is something I will always remember. According to her friends, Jenny had apparently climbed on top like she always did, but this time she'd somehow fallen off. Her friends swore up and down that someone had pushed her, but no one ever owned up to it. Right after it happened, I saw Fred standing by the monkey bars with a big smile on his face. The rest of the school day went by in a blur. All the other kids had a hard time concentrating because of what happened to Jenny. Miss Newman gave us a good talking to about safety to make sure something like that didn't happen again. The best part of the day, though, was not getting any homework. That meant I could play with Fred all weekend. 6 months later, Fred and I were playing out in the front yard. We were digging for treasure, one of our favorite summer pastimes. Our neighbor had the meanest dog you'll ever see, and they usually kept it chained up in the backyard. I was terrified of that dog. There had been a few near bites over the years. I heard the snap of a chain and looked around in horror. The next thing I knew, there was a huge pit bull staring me down and growling. Drool was oozing down its face. I got up quick and ran, but it clamped down on my leg, tearing my skin with a wet, audible rip. I cried out for my mom, but she must have been doing the laundry or something in the basement. I kicked it as hard as I could repeatedly with my other foot. At one point, I kicked it so hard in the head that little blood escaped its right ear and it let go for a moment. I had just enough time to dart across the street as quickly as I could. It recovered quickly and was only a few feet behind me when I turned to look. I knew in my heart that was the day I was going to die. I vividly recall seeing the car slamming on its brakes, and the squeal of tires was deafening. The dog never stopped coming for me, even as the out of control car's front tires greedily pulled it beneath them. I saw what remained of the dog, spread halfway down the road by the time the car finally stopped moving. Even in a state of shock, I still couldn't help but notice. Fred was standing next to the car, just smiling at me as I bawled my eyes out. I remember another time when I was a few years older. Dad had lost his job when the factory shut down and started drinking a lot. While it was nice to have someone home when I came back from school every day, he was mean sometimes. One day I came home and in on him wrestling with our neighbor, Miss Judy. Dad got mad when he saw me and slapped me so hard I dropped my book bag. I left it there on my floor and ran up to my room. I cried all night and didn't even want to leave my room for supper, but Mom made me. When she asked me what was wrong, I told her I'd just had a bad day at school. Dad told me that if I told Mom what happened, I'd get it worse. I'd never been afraid of Dad before, but he'd been so different lately. After dinner, I went back to my room, where Fred was waiting for me with a frown. We talked for a while about what happened. Fred kept all my secrets from me. I was thankful for that. Everyone needs someone they can talk to about everything in their lives. The next day, Dad didn't make me breakfast. He was passed out in bed drunk. I made a bowl of cereal and went on my way to school. When I came home, I found Dad wrestling with Miss Judy again. I tried to just sneak by this time, but Dad caught me. I screamed as he chased me all the way up the stairs. Just as I got to the top, he grabbed me by the book bag slung over my shoulder and pulled. I fought as hard as I could, not wanting my father to hurt me again. That's when the strangest thing happened. Dad just let go. I glanced over my shoulder as I moved, just in time to see Dad falling down the stairs. I noticed Fred was there, watching. I rushed down the stairs after him. Even though he hurt me, I still loved my father, and I didn't want to see him hurt. By the time I caught up with him at the bottom of the staircase, Miss Judy was screaming. I remember shaking my father and screaming as his blood drenched my school clothes. His neck had been torn open where his head was forced to a 180-degree angle during the fall. Miss Judy called 911, and before long, the police and paramedics showed up. My mom wasn't too far behind. Dad's funeral was a few days after that. I spent a lot of time crying in my room while Fred consoled me. We'd become closer than ever during those few months. By the time I turned 15, Mom remarried. I was against it at first, but Daniel was a really nice guy. He didn't drink like my father had and took great care of Mom and me. I still saw Fred a lot, but it was a little estranged. He changed over the last year or so. It was a little weird that I still had an imaginary friend at my age. I didn't talk about him to anyone, though. The last thing I needed was people making fun of me, thinking I was batshit crazy or something. Fred still helped with my math homework when I needed it. He was a genius when it came to math. He'd taken to relaxing in bed at night while we talked, and sometimes I'd pass out with him there beside me. It seemed so innocent. I thought little about it. I owed Fred a lot, to be honest. He'd been there for me so many dark times throughout my life. One morning I woke up undressed, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember removing my clothes. I was kind of sore all over too, which was weird. It was a Saturday, thank God, so at least I didn't have to go to school. I made it a bed day so I could relax and recuperate. That day was uneventful. I made it to the kitchen for meals, but otherwise kept to the bedroom with a book. I didn't see Fred for a little while after that, but I knew he'd be there when I woke up because his distinct smell of baby powder and peppermint still permeated the air in my room. 2 weeks later, I woke up one morning in so much pain I could barely even move. I noticed there was a lot of blood, partially dried. It was up and down my thighs in the small congealed puddle where I'd been laying. There were small but deep cuts across my legs and a few on my stomach as well that I just couldn't explain. Just gaping holes staring up at me where my flesh used to be. I barely had the strength to yank my sheets and bedspread off the bed and hide them in my closet. I'd wash them later when no one was home. I don't know what I didn't know what to do, but talking to my mom about it just felt weird. I had no actual idea what was going on, so how could I even explain it? The only thing I knew for sure was that Fred had to have been behind it. I could smell him all over me. I forced myself into the shower and turned the hot water on as hot as I could make it. I just stood there for a while, scrubbing myself so hard I had to have removed a few top layers of my skin. Then I curled up and cried while the scalding water beat down on me from above. In the moment, all I wanted was to die, for there to be an end to what was happening. How could Fred, my best friend in the world, betray me like this? Why would he do this to me? What was he doing to me? I decided that I never wanted to see or speak to him again. Tonight, I wouldn't fall asleep. Not that I'd be able to sleep anyway. Eventually, Mom and Daniel left the house, so I threw my sheets and bedspread into the laundry with some bleach. I ended up having to throw out my bedding, though. There was just no saving it. Luckily, I had a ton of replacements for the bed, so I didn't think Mom would really notice. I grabbed a new set, put it all together on the bed, and went down to the kitchen to find something to eat. I stood there in front of the refrigerator for so long I lost track of time. That cool breeze against my raw skin was soothing. I was so numb that the fact that I could feel anything at all amazed me. I ended up not eating anything and just went to the living room to put on the television. I can't even remember what I watched. My brain wasn't exactly functioning at full capacity. It was just a blur of random sitcoms, commercials, and reality shows. I stayed that way until evening when Mom and Daniel finally came home. I must have been the best actress in the world, I thought, as I detached myself completely from my situation and made polite conversation with him. The only thing I knew was that I didn't want to be alone, and I sure as hell didn't want to be anywhere near my bedroom. Mom suggested a family game night, and I was secretly thankful for the excuse to be around them longer. It was difficult to pay attention to the games we played. I ended up losing every single one of them. By the time Mom realized what time it was just after midnight. She called it a night. She and Daniel were tired from their hike and had a whole day of antiquing planned for the next day. So I reluctantly said goodnight myself and, with increasing terror, made the way up the stairs to my bedroom. I reached a hand to flip the light switch on before I even entered. I breathed a sigh of relief when I noticed Fred was not there to greet me. I stayed up till the morning sun dripped through my windows, feeling a little safer with the light of day. I finally fell asleep. I should have known that no time of day was or would ever be safe for me again. The pain woke me up this time. How long I slept, I'll never know. I was willing to cooperate to get myself to safety or to even scream out for help. I felt like I was trapped inside my own body, powerless to stop what was going on. Fred locked eyes with me and winked, which only made things much worse. That much worse. He made small incisions in my body while he stared deeply into my eyes. Each little piece of flesh he removed, he stuffed into his cartoonish mouth. No words were said during this, just the sickening sounds of his teeth grinding and tearing those little pieces of me into oblivion. He pressed one of his index fingers to his lips and winked one more time as I passed out from the pain before it was even over. And when I woke up, Fred had disappeared. I washed the shame and terror from my trembling body with more scalding water, this time scrubbing even harder than I had before. I scrubbed till my skin was so burnt and raw that it bled. I threw yet another set of bedding in a trash bag and snuck it into a large bin out front. The trash ran the next day, so I knew Mom and Daniel wouldn't see it. I made my bed up again and went back to the bathroom to look in the mirror. There were dark circles under my eyes, and I looked as bad as I felt. I stood there for a while, staring at my reflection, blaming myself for what was happening to me. I'd done something wrong, I must have. Nothing else could possibly explain why Fred was doing this to me. This started happening more frequently. A week of respite passed before it suddenly became a nightmarish routine. The pain would wake me up, and I would be forced to watch Fred consume small pieces of my flesh. His visage was becoming more terrifying every time I saw him. His once cartoonish features had taken on a much more sinister appearance. Each time I endured it for longer before passing out again. The look on his face promising to show me the knife again tomorrow night was the last thing I would see. It was getting harder every day to hide the wounds, and what little savings I had were going to replace my bedding so Mom and Daniel wouldn't notice. I was getting to the point I just wanted to die. I needed peace, and I felt like there might be only one way to get it. The following Friday, I grabbed my laptop and went to the family room and booted it up. I was desperate and searched through various subreddits for any information that might help me. I even posted a little about it, hoping to get some advice. It was apparently the consensus that Fred wasn't so imaginary after all. Since I was the only person capable of seeing him, most people thought he might have been a ghost. A few hours later, I had more information than I knew what to do with. I went around the house collecting some things that people had suggested. I grabbed a bag of rock salt Daniel kept for the winter out of the shed out back. For the first time in my life, I thanked the gods for my mom's hippie days. She's what you'd call a new ager before I was born, and kept a few boxes from the old days in the attic. I found a Ziploc bag labeled white sage, a pentacle, and some black candles. According to the advice I got, black candles were supposed to banish negativity. The pentacle was for protection, and white sage was to bless and cleanse my house. And the salt was just something I'd seen on Supernatural. There was some sort of weird comfort to think that I was reenacting a scene from my favorite TV show. I felt stupid walking around the house while I burned white sage in each room. I wasn't entirely sure that any of this would help, but I didn't want to take any chances. When I was done, I went back to my room and burned some more. I lit the candles, put on the pentacle, and started putting salt in front of the door and the window in my room. Just for good measure, I even borrowed Dan's Bible and sat there for a little while reading verses out loud. I was an atheist, but at this point, I needed all the help I could get. I had everything all cleaned up and aired out before Mom and Daniel got home. I lit the black candles burning on the little table next to my bed like I'd been told to. I was supposed to burn them to nothing and then bury the wax with a pentacle on the unhollowed ground the following day. I had no idea how I'd be able to dig a hole at the church or the graveyard, but I'd worry about that when the time came. Mom seemed excited about what they found when they were antiquing, and I helped her and Daniel unload their finds from the back of his old red pickup truck. I feigned interest as they showed me each one of them and explained what exactly they were, what they were worth, and what they actually paid for them. She even found this cool old vanity for me. Even though I'd been bugging her to find me one for years, I just didn't have it in me to be very excited about it. At least, not for real. I put on a good show, of course, but I was getting good at that. Just like every night since my problems started, I found excuses to hang out with him for as long as possible. Mom made some popcorn and we watched a few episodes of Doctor Who on Netflix. It was another of my favorite shows, and I found a little comfort in watching David Tennant run around like a man possessed. We'd watched 7 episodes before we realized it, and Mom and Daniel went to bed. I began the slow climb of the stairs, half expecting someone to shout, "Dead man walking." Fred wasn't there, but I didn't really expect him to be. If my plan didn't work, I wouldn't see him until he woke me up in the middle of the night anyway. I booted up my laptop and got sucked into Facebook for a while, and even ended up watching a bunch of random videos on YouTube. When the first rays of morning light came through my windows, I shut out the laptop and lay down on my bed. I passed out soon after. I woke up to moving around my bed and immediately tensed up. My eyes darted to find the source, and I expelled an enormous sigh of relief when I saw my mom sitting there with a sweet smile. I leaned up and hugged her. I was so happy the plan had worked. She laughed a little and hugged me back. I remember her asking me what had gotten into me, and I made up a silly excuse about not appreciating her enough. We laughed together for a little longer and went downstairs to eat some breakfast. It had been over a week since I'd had a decent sleep, and it felt good. I'd never be the same after what Fred had done to me. At least it was over now. Hundreds of small scars across my body would be an eternal reminder. Years went by with no sign of Fred, but I continued my cleansing routine out of habit. I left for college a few years later and didn't visit that much over the holidays. The less time I had to spend in that house, the better. Then I ended up getting married, having a kid, and moving on with my life. Mom died almost 5 years after Christina was born. She'd become extremely reclusive toward the end of her life and was impossible to get a hold of. It hurt me deeply that she never wanted to meet her granddaughter. Daniel had broken the news to me kindly, but there was something about his voice that just sounded off. All he said is that there had to have been some sort of animal attack on one of her solo hikes while he was at work. When he got home, she was lying in bed, covered in minor cuts and bleeding everywhere. He told me she just kept muttering the word animal repeatedly in a fugue state. Her heart had given out after the paramedics had arrived on her way to the hospital. Daniel disappeared altogether after that, and I got a letter in the mail stating that Mom had left us the house. I thought about selling it, but it was a lot bigger than where we lived, and my husband and I had been talking about having another kid. After a few arguments, he finally convinced me it made the most financial sense, so reluctantly, I gave in, and we moved 2 weeks ago, leaving our tiny leaving our tiny two-bedroom apartment behind. I should have argued harder against it. Hell, maybe I should have just burnt the place down the night I got that letter. I knew that what Daniel had told me wasn't the entire story. I could feel it in every little scar on my body. If only I knew then what I know now. 3 hours ago, I went into my old room, and now it belongs to my daughter Christina. She was talking to her stuffed animals and having a tea party. I smiled and started back down the hallway, content to see her happy. She was only in kindergarten, but it had been hard for her to leave her friends behind. She hadn't made any new ones since we moved here, but I was sure that given a little time, that would change. I didn't get too far from the room before freezing in place, horrified, as I heard her sweet little voice say the name, Fred. And that's the end.
Yeah. The first time I read that, it was like, oh my God, somebody wrote an adult version of the story.
Yeah. Drop Dead Fred is one of my favorite movies of all time. It really is. And I wanted to kind of spin it on its head a little bit, but I said, like, you can see, like, where I left some of the original elements into it, like with the showers and, like, the shame she was feeling. But originally, that was actually not a story about someone carving pieces out of her legs and eating them. It was a. I hesitate to say what it was, but I'm sure you can gather what it was from the context. It was a very trigger warning, more than this version of it.
It was
that original
what
version can't really be found anymore because it was only in print in my first ever collection called Campfire Tales, which is long since out of print. But the only person I know that will own a copy is Jenny here very soon when I send it to her because I still own it. And then a podcast where Jessica Rainville voiced the entire original version. But it's a tough one. It was a really tough story to write. The whole time I'm writing, I was freaking out. And when I originally submitted it to Patty for inclusion, I told her, I was like, listen, I'm going to send you this version, but I don't think you can publish this version. I'd like to rewrite it. And she started to read it. She started to get into the bad parts, and she was like, yeah, I can't. Just rewrite it. So that's the version we ended up with. And I'm glad that it was changed to this. I think it's a lot better off.
Oh, yeah. What were your thoughts, Mel?
Well, I love Drop Dead Fred, but there for a while, though, when you were reading it, when you were getting to certain parts, I was like, just holding my breath.
Yeah. Something I don't talk a lot about, but I do once in a while is So I'm a childhood victim of sexual assault over a period of years, and that is the real reason why I had included that in the original version of the story, because it was kind of my way of, even though the main character was a female, I thought it would be more powerful if it was a female character, because people don't look too kindly at men who come out and talk about these things. But it was a way for me to kind of get out there and be therapeutic about it with the guise of fiction. So I've been talking about it a little bit more recently as a victim advocate, but that's why that story was so important to me. But again, I saw the need to maybe not have that in the story when I remarketed it. So
It's sad that if guys come out, they're thought of so much less if they say, hey, this happened to me. This needs to be talked about, and this needs to be known so something can be done to stop it.
yeah,
It's,
yeah.
Culture is still changing, but it's still awful in certain parts.
Yeah. No, I got a lot of shit when I first wrote that story and people would read it. I got a lot of angry emails. I'm not gonna lie with that initial version of that, and even this version, I've gotten a few people that are like, "How could you, blah blah blah." I'm not gonna get into their comments. I'm sure you can imagine what they were, but it's not usually until I explain my history growing up as a child that they're like, "Okay."
Backstepping.
Yeah, it's immediate back. So you're not just a guy writing about a little girl that something bad happens to, which a lot of writers do that. They'll take stories, things that, real things, and put them in there without having experienced them. That's fine. And, if you're a good enough writer, you can do that. But for me, it was just like I said, I always try and explain myself a little bit so people know where that story was really coming from. It's a hard one to explain.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But other than that, Drop Dead Fred, that's great. Also kind of leans towards, like, is it an evil spirit or is it a demon? Like, so many possibilities there.
My thoughts, it was a demon.
So in my brain, it was actually a tulpa.
Oh.
She needed a friend so badly that she made one up and put so much of her life and energy into it that it was real only to her. That was my original version of it, but knowing that it can be interpreted so many different ways, I thought it was more fun to not say what it was, so that way people could. Because the mark of a good story is that you can talk about it and have your own concepts on what something was or is. So I do leave a number of things like that kind of open-ended for people.
That's great.
And I didn't realize how often sometimes that I mention Doctor Who in stories, and that was like 2 back-to-back right there. Written at completely different times in my life, too. That one was back when it was still on Netflix, apparently.
Oh, yeah. And 1 second.
Well, I'm sure Jenny's let you know, but we've watched Doctor Who all of our lives anyway, so
Me too.
Can totally relate.
Tennant is my man. Like, I love me some David Tennant and Tom Baker are like right there for me. Although I really did enjoy Eccleston, even though he only had that first season run in New Who. Like, yes. He was going to go somewhere before the politics of the show kind of took him out of it and he quit.
Right.
I would have liked to have seen more.
That would have been awesome. But as you can tell, my page name, Friday with the Library in the Blue Box, I am a big fan.
Oh, yeah. Not a huge fan of Matt Smith. I'd say Matt Smith of New Who has been the only Doctor that I was just kind of on. I didn't hate him, but there were elements with his run, and specifically Amy Pond I didn't care much for. Rory, I loved him, but Amy, I don't know. There was just something about the combo of her and Matt Smith. I just I didn't vibe on it at all.
Of the new companions, Clara, the whole impossible girl. Sophia's middle name is Oswin, and she turned out to be an impossible girl. 3 hard to fix, and nothing stops her. Yep, it fits.
Fuck yeah. I'm almost caught up with the female Doctor. I actually like her quite a bit. What sucks is the writing for her run. It kind of got bad because the showrunner was just I feel like he was just kind of calling some stuff in, which is now we got the original showrunner back, so yay. But up until then, like, her season suffered from some bad writing, but her acting and her time as the Doctor is pretty damn amazing.
She is a great actress. Mm-hmm. She was not given what she deserved for the role.
Exactly. All you Who naysayers out there saying the Doctor can't be a female, I mean, people were going nuts about that. Like, they were like, there was like hate speech going on with that, and I'm like, that made me very angry. Very.
I didn't have a problem with that. I just thought it was funny that they got one of the James Bonds to be a Time Lord.
Yes.
That was great.
That was epic. And we got Tennant coming back. So yay.
Yes.
Tennant and Donna.
That's going to be an interesting special right there.
I'm so excited for it, man. I'm like over the moon excited about it.
As soon as I can get it, it's going to be mine.
Hey, when I get it, you get it. So
Yes.
we'll do a watch
That
party.
rocks. But anyway, I guess let's continue on to There's Something Different About Her. Please, Sissy, read to us. I love it when you read to us.
All right, here I go. There's something different about her. As Lynn drove off to visit her parents, I waved with a smile. I was going to enjoy the next week. Sure, I'd miss her, but it was going to be great hanging with the guys too. 7 days wasn't a long time, but it was long enough. As much as my friends make fun of me, I'm truly in love with her. We'd never been apart for longer than a weekend before. But even then, we'd check in with each other a few times a day. Unfortunately, this time around, her and her parents were vacationing in a cabin out in the woods. So the cell phone reception would be spotty if it even existed at all. Living out in the deep country, cell phone service issues were something we had grown used to. But this was even more remote than we were living. I likely wouldn't even hear anything from her until they were leaving, which made more than a little nervous, which made me more than a little nervous. Hopefully, everything would go well and the time would fly by quickly. Later that evening, I went out with my buddies, Greg and Nick. We had planned to hit up a local club where one of our favorite local bands were playing. Thankfully, Nick had volunteered to be the designated driver, so Greg and I got completely shit faced. The music was amazing, as it always was, and we enjoyed the 90s grunge theme of the club. It really took us back to the old days. I even bought the band a round of drinks and talked to them for a little while. All in all, it was a damn near perfect night. Nick dropped me off at home and I wandered up to the front door. I took my keys from my pocket and slipped them into the lock, but found the door was already unlocked. That was odd. I could have sworn I'd locked it on my way out. I went into security mode and quickly stumbled into the house, grabbing a huge umbrella from the nearby stand as I went. I staggered into the living room with it held over my head and came to an abrupt halt, seeing Lynn sitting there reading a book. I pulled a smooth move and put the umbrella away before she looked up with a loving smile. Have a good night, babe? I rose a brow and moved to sit next to her on the couch as I spoke. Yeah, it was awesome. Shrug was playing tonight. What are you doing home, baby? I thought you were on the road to a cabin earlier. She smiled and shrugged while replying. About a half hour or so after I left, I got a call from Mom saying that Dad wasn't doing too well, and we had to postpone until next weekend. It kind of sucks, but since I don't work weekends, I guess it's not really that big of a deal. I was a little concerned hearing that. What's wrong with your dad? Is everything okay? She nodded and put a hand on my leg. Yeah, just his blood pressure again. It sounds like you know how stressed out he is all the time. I nodded. Her father had seemed more stressed out than usual lately. I adored her father, truly. He'd given me a lot of amazing advice over the years and had welcomed me into their family almost immediately. He had become more of a father to me than my own father had ever been. Somewhere I even still had a Ura Heap album he'd given me in high school. Just one of those completely random memories. I was glad the man was going to be all right. The room was still spinning a bit from all the alcohol. I'd looked longingly at the kitchen for a minute. I hadn't realized how hungry I was up until that moment. I looked back to Lynn with a huge smile on my face. Babe, how much do you love me? She set her book down and rose an inquisitive brow at that, certain I was playing her up for something or another. More than anything, an exact answer depends on what exactly it is that you want. I chuckled at the drunkenly before responding sweetly. I would give you my kingdom for a bacon burger right now. Lynn smirked at my comment. And what kingdom would that be, Aaron? My smile faded a bit as it took all the concentration that my drunken mind possessed to think of the name of my kingdom. I grinned again when I thought of an idea and told her about it. The kingdom of never sober, where the men drink all day and the ladies make bacon burgers. It's a magical world, really full of great liquor and greasy foods. No one gets a hangover there either, which is why it's magic. She seemed impressed that I was able to string all that together and took some time to blatantly laugh at me before responding. Sounds like you live in a very sexist kingdom, sweetheart. What if I want to drink all day and have someone make me burgers? I was quick to respond. Yes, I thought you might say that. As the king of Never Sober, I hereby make you my queen. She shall drink or make burgers on alternating days, except for Sundays, when we shall drink beer together and eat pizza. 'Cause let's be honest, sometimes you just need a break from burgers. That, of course, uh, elicited another grin and laugh from Lynn. She ran her fingers through my hair for a moment before slipping off the couch. Only because I love you, my king, shall I make you the burger that thou hast so humbly requested. I was a little surprised. While she did cook for me generally, she'd usually suggest that we get some fast food or something. So she didn't have to cook so late. I assumed she was just in a great mood and decided not to question it. Least my bacon burger be forsaken. I laid down on the couch and closed my eyes to rest for a second. The next thing I knew, she was shaking me awake gently and laying my plated burger on the coffee table in front of me. Just as I shook off the sleep and woke myself up, she was coming back with a nice tall glass of milk, and she knew me so well. I kissed her on the cheek and tucked it into my food. I finished in record time and chugged the last half of my glass of milk to wash it all down. I looked over at her when I was done. Thanks, baby. I'm lucky to have you. She smirked at that before replying, Damn right you are. I laughed and stood up with a stretch. I took his plate to the kitchen sink and pre-washed the ketchup from it for easy cleanup later. I wandered back into the living room with a yawn before looking at her again. I'm tired, baby. I think I'm going to head to bed. Coming with me? She smiled at me over her book as she responded, I'm going to stay down here and do some cleaning between chapters. I'll be up in a little while. I bowed my head to her reverently while speaking. I shall see thee on the morrow, my queen. I left the room, followed by a new round of laughter echoing down the hall from Lynn. I somehow managed to climb the steps and ditch most of my clothes on the way to bed, where I quickly passed out. I woke up in the middle of the night to strange sounds coming from downstairs. A quick glance to the other side of the bed told me that Lynn hadn't made it to bed. I blinked my eyes a few times, forced myself to stand, and walked out of our bedroom and down the stairs. I walked as quietly as I could out of habit for the time of night. When I got to the bottom step, I looked both ways and ended up slowly following the sound to the bathroom. Noticing the door was cracked a little, I knocked on it before entering. "Is everything okay, babe?" I looked around the bathroom lazily before noticing the blood in the sink. I jolted completely awake and ran into her side at the sink. I thought I'd noticed a tooth, but before I had the time to take a decent look, she was already running hot water and washing whatever had been there down the drain. I stared at her reflection in the mirror. "Oh my God, baby, what happened?" She seemed pale, but otherwise okay as she responded, "I'm fine, honey. It's just a nosebleed." I was concerned. I couldn't remember the last time she had had one. "Do you have a headache or anything?" She washed her face before responding tiredly. "No, just the nosebleed. It happens sometimes when the weather changes like this. Gotta love living in Ohio." I eased a bit when I saw her give me a slight smile. I wrapped his arms around her and kissed the top of her head lovingly before talking again. "Let's go back to bed, and I'll rub your shoulders. If you're still feeling bad tomorrow, we'll just call a bed and Netflix day." She smiled and nodded a bit, allowing me to lead her back upstairs to the bed. As promised, I rubbed her shoulders until she fell asleep, then passed out again soon afterwards myself. I woke up the next morning and once again found her side of the bed empty. I yawned with a stretch and slipped out of bed and headed for the bathroom. I was nursing one hell of a hangover, and the best way to start the day in this scenario was with a nice hot shower. As I got in and turned on balance the temperature via the hot and cold faucets, I noticed something in the drain. There seemed to be a rather large amount of hair in there that hadn't been there the day before. It was a little odd, but not completely out of the ordinary. So I stood up and enjoyed the water flowing over my skin. I wasted about 30 minutes in there before getting out to towel off. I pulled on some flannel pajama pants and the first t-shirt I pulled out of my drawer. Before heading downstairs, about halfway down, I caught the smell of pancakes and what seemed to be bacon. Bacon twice in a row. This was like some previously unexplored version of heaven. I rushed down the rest of the steps, down the hallway, and into the kitchen. I slipped up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist. She startled a bit before turning around with a huge grin and a curtsy. "Your greasy breakfast is nearly ready, my liege." I got a huge kick out of that and laid a gentle kiss on her sweet lips before speaking. "I can't remember the last time you got up early to cook me breakfast, babe. Are you sure you're feeling okay?" I was only half joking. I was still kind of worried about her from the night before. She turned back around to flip the pancakes as she responded, "I'll be fine, just couldn't sleep well last night." Thought I'd surprise you with a nice breakfast. Coffee is ready if you want some. I put the bottle of ibuprofen next to the pot in the counter just in case. I sighed contently and headed for the coffee and ibuprofen as I spoke. What would I do without you, babe? She chuckled and flipped the pancakes again as she replied. I ask myself the same question every day. I smirked, poured his coffee, took a couple of ibuprofens, and went to the kitchen table to relax. Halfway through my first cup, she served me a ham and cheese omelet, some buttermilk pancakes, and of course the glorious bacon. I put a hand on her arm before she went to get her own plate. I gotta pause for a minute to plug up my computer.
It's all good.
Okay. I really appreciate this, babe. Love you. She gave me a wink before settling a quick kiss and hurrying off to get her own plate. We sat there for a while, eating and drinking coffee and making general conversation. Even though she insisted that she was feeling okay, I still couldn't help but worry about her. I convinced her to have the bed and Netflix day after all. We spent most of the day and the evening binge watching episodes of American Horror Story, one of their favorite shows. We even took turns getting snacks from the kitchen and making conversations about plot points. It was going on 3 in the morning by the time we realized it. After the last episode of the season we were on was over, Lynn kissed my cheek and slipped out of bed. I'm going to go take a bath and read for a bit. I nodded and spoke as she wandered off. If I haven't heard from you in an hour or so, I'll come check on you. I flipped through the newly added section of Netflix to find something that would catch my interest. Like always, I ended up scanning every single row of films listed, which ate up about 30 minutes of my time. In the end, I settled on watching an episode of 30 Rock. When that was over, I headed downstairs to check on Lynn. I found her in the tub reading her Kindle. The water looked a little red, but I assumed she'd used some bath salts or something, which she was known to do now and then. I sat on the closed toilet next to the tub and smiled over at her. You doing okay in here? It's been about an hour now. She lowered the Kindle to look over at me and nodded. Yeah, I just got caught up in this book. I'll be out in a bit. I kissed her forehead and headed back up the stairs to get back into bed. I watched a couple more episodes. By the time that 2-hour mark had passed, I decided to wander back down and check on her again. She never stayed in the tub for this long. She must be going for a new personal best, I joked with myself. By the time I got there, I found the bathtub empty. I glanced at the tub and noticed that there was a dark red ring of film in it. There was a strange smell in the room. I couldn't put my finger on it. I left the bathroom and went in search of her. It didn't take long. She was wrapped in a towel on the couch reading. Babe, are you sure everything is okay? I just found the weirdest shit in the tub. She looked up curiously. Look, I've told you 100 times today, honey. I'm fine. Sorry I accidentally used too much bubble bath stuff. I'll rinse it out better before I come to bed so it doesn't stain. That explained the red ring, but not the smell. I decided to let it go for now. I carefully unwrapped the towel from her body, ditched my clothes, and we made love right there on the couch. We'd been lurking some spontaneous spontaneity lately, and it was nice to just go with the flow of things, so to speak. Things seemed a little different, though. It turned out to be the best sex I'd ever had in my entire life. I couldn't quite explain it. Was almost like making love to another person. She'd done things she'd never done before that drove me absolutely wild. I carried her to bed where we passed out, curled up with one another. Despite work, all week went like that. There was breakfast every morning, dinner every night, and amazing sex sometimes more than once a day. And of course, her random disappearances at odd times for baths and the like. There were also strange things happening more often. I found the red ring in the bath a few more times, an increasing amount of hair in the drain, and I would swear I saw a tooth in the sink the other day. I was met with increasing levels of annoyance. However, whenever I asked her how she was feeling, the strangest thing of all happened. On Thursday morning, on my way to work that morning, I'd gotten a voicemail from her boss wondering if she was all right. When I asked Lynn about it, she told me that she had taken the week off work and maybe the manager had forgotten about it. Lynn said she'd give her a call and take care of it. I just couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't seem like herself, yet at the same time was more than enjoying this new her. That night, while we were making love, something odd happened. We were in mid-kiss when one of her teeth came out, and it somehow made its way into my mouth. I gripped her face on either side carefully and was trying to break the kiss in a panic when the skin on her face seemed to tear. She jumped up and ran to the bathroom, with me hot on her tail. She slammed the door in my face and locked it, refusing to let me in. That's when I heard my cell phone ring upstairs. No one ever called this late, so I assumed it was an emergency. I dashed upstairs to grab my phone and was in the process of answering it again as I was about halfway back down the stairs. It was Lynn's mother. "Aaron? Hello?" "Yeah, I'm here. Is there something wrong with Jeannie?" No, it's Lynn. There's been an accident." At that, I jerked my phone away from my ear and looked between it and the bathroom before responding. Had she called her mother? "What's going on with Lynn?" "I've been worried for days. We just made it to the hospital. Something attacked her out in the woods this morning. The doctors think it was a wolf or something, but we're still not entirely sure yet." "How quickly can you make it here?" The whole world came to a standstill. How was any of this possible? Lynn was just on the other side of that door. They just made love, for fuck's sake. None of this made any sense to me. With the phone in my ear, I slammed my foot hard enough into the bathroom door to pop the lock. As it flew open, I saw her, or at least what was left of her. Something stood there, devoid of skin, staring at me with her eyes, its mouth open into a snare, revealing a glistening hole full of broken teeth and bleeding gums. A twisted claw hand swiped out at me, ripping into the flesh of my chest. I screamed and dropped the phone as the creature tried to pull me in the bathroom. I pulled all my weight behind a boot to its left knee. It roared as it stumbled, buying me just enough time to get the fuck out of there. I could hear Lynn's mom screaming over the phone as I ran past, but there was no time to pick it up. I tore down the hallway and through the living room to the front door with that thing in hot pursuit. It was close enough that I could smell its rancid breath as it breathed on my neck. I made it to the front door, but it was locked. I ducked just as it clawed at me. Instead of wedging those jagged claws right into the wood of the front door, it wailed as it wiggled around, attempting to dislodge itself. I grabbed a nearby lamp and smashed it over the thing's oozing head, but it didn't seem to faze it much. I took off once again, this time for the back door. I made it there quickly enough and even managed to unlock it and slip out into the night as I heard the creature's screams as it thundered along behind me. Our closest neighbor was just through the woods behind the house, barely a quarter of a mile away. I'd made the journey a few times in the last year or so, and it was a short one. Right now, however, it might as well be across the country. I ducked through the bushes and under the branches all the while. I heard it crashing along, slipping now and again from the gore that clung to its feet. I could hear more sheets of quickly decaying flesh slide off it as I ran. It squished and oozed its way faster, starting to close the distance between us once again. I had no idea how close I was to the neighbor's house and wasn't sure how much longer I had before the thing overtook me. Suddenly, I made it out of the woods, that old brown and white cottage coming into view. I no sooner left the tree line when that thing grabbed me. Dark fluid soaked through the shoulder of my t-shirt as it jerked me backwards and onto my ass. It looked down at me, thick yellow viscous fluid gushing into at its mouth as its jaw unhinged to open its mouth wider than automatically possible. Just as it pulled back its claws for what surely would have been its final swipe, its bulbous head exploded into bloody, rotten chunks everywhere, and it fell atop me. I kicked it off and scooted backwards as fast as I could, not stopping till I ran into something. I looked back to see what had halted my progress and saw my neighbor standing there with a smoking double-barreled shotgun. He looked me over and turned to walk away, monitoring me. Apparently I can't speak all of a sudden, to get up and follow him. Not even thinking twice about it, I pulled myself to my feet and followed him inside. Once inside, he set me down on his couch and slipped a beer into my hands. He sat in a recliner across from me and lit his pipe. We sat there in silence for a little bit while I drank the beer and tried to come to terms with what I'd just seen. Eventually, I looked over at him, questions whirling in my brain. I started with the first thing that came to mind. What the fuck was that thing? He sighed and filled me in as best as he could. There was no name he knew to call it, but he'd killed a few of them over the years in the area. They were known to take over the life of a loved one, and over time they'd eat you alive before moving on. He told me that it happened to him a few years back, and he'd never heard from his actual wife ever again. He thought maybe the thing had killed her, which of course immediately snapped me back to reality. I borrowed his phone to call my wife's mother. I calmed her down long enough to tell her I'd be on the way to the hospital, and I'd explain everything when I got there. My neighbor drove me back to the house and even came inside while I grabbed my keys and packed a few things. Before I left, I locked up and thanked my neighbor for his assistance. He promised to tell me more about the creature when I came back. Lynn and I decided to move in with her parents for a while. Jean and I took care of the move while Lynn's mother took care of her. I never did speak to my neighbor about the creature. I just couldn't handle any information than I'd already had. To this day, I see my wife in a different way. When I stare into her eyes, all I can see is that creature looking at me in the bathroom. I never told her and her family the truth of what happened to me. I made up lies about a stupid injury, and they didn't ask a lot of questions. This morning, I went to take a shower and noticed a foul-smelling ring in the tub. Her mother made a grand breakfast that morning. I can't shake the feeling that there's something different about her. Then,
That is always a fun story to read / listen to.
That's definitely one of my favorites that I ever wrote. There's a lot going on in that with that story, to be honest. So I'm Aaron. that's actually my middle name. Lynn is she was my high school sweetheart turned like best friend. Her father Gene, I was also very very close to. They moved because they were in the Air Force. So in high school, and I've actually kept in touch with her all these years. We're just really good friends now. She's a teacher out in Nebraska who I've donated books to her classroom before. So this was like my way of kind of writing a story about her and her father and kind of bringing them into everything. And a couple of my other buddies in there, Nick and Greg. We used to go to like a lot of bars and shows together. But this was a big fun one for me, just to kind of, put a lot of fun stuff in there from people I knew and things I knew about. And I never actually say, again, what the creature is in this, because people assume it's Skinwalker. There's actually a couple of things out in the woods that it could be if you know a lot about Native American lore. Traditionally, the Navajos do not appreciate people using the term Skinwalker because it's a very bad thing to say out loud and to talk about in their culture. So I rarely ever will name it when I'm writing about one, just out of kind of respect for tribal history. 'Cause I'm not Navajo. I'm Cherokee. I'm almost half Cherokee actually, but I tend to try and respect other cultures when I can.
mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, my live died.
Oh
So,
no.
yeah,
Well, they know to come find it on YouTube
yeah. So,
and your channel. Well, our channel. So they can find it.
I think my phone overheated.
That's a possibility because
I have
it's
a
like
shit
87
phone. Mine
degrees
overheats
here.
quick. I think I'm still sitting on a Samsung 7. So it's very old. It dies quickly.
Well, unfortunately, until I get more subscribers, I can't use the creator portal on the laptop.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Well, we need to help you with that. Make sure we get that out there, and we do some extra posts for that this week to get your numbers up, man.
oh yeah,
I've been trying to get her show out. I've been, as you can see, help her with the show. Hence, asking you and Patty to come and join us.
I'm almost up to 2,000 already. Okay,
That's amazing.
Awesome.
That is amazing.
So,
And I
we're
do
getting
hope
there.
you go look
Well,
at your Instagram.
Oh no! Don't threaten me with a good time talking about stories.
Well, Instagram's always been easy, but like, I think most of my Instagram followers migrated to TikTok. So
A lot of Instagrammers are. I've noticed that myself.
I'm trying to post on all the sites, but it's just not. It's difficult.
Yeah, it's hard. Trust me. I totally understand.
This is why Jenny does it for me. No, it's weird because so my wife reads, but she kind of stopped reading like 4 years ago, so she's not really reading anything. She doesn't read any of my stuff or really talk to me much about it unless I make them, make her talk about it. The kids don't read; they're just impatient. They're not readers. Most people I work with at the haunt don't read. Fred, actually, the owner, He always tells me, he's like, I'm gonna wait for an audio form, or I'm gonna wait for you to read it to me, because he's just not a big reader. And most of the people I know in my daily life are not readers. So I only
send
actually
him
get to
this
talk him.
episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna make him listen to it. Actually, I was kind of talking to him in the background a little bit. He's gonna listen to it later. But so I only really get to talk about writing online, honestly, with you guys and the network and just all the different shows. Like that's it. That's the only time I get to scratch that itch, and I fucking love it. I just
So
love
Fred,
talking about whether I wrote it or not. I don't even care. I just like to talk about books and stories.
Fred from Hell's Dungeon, we see you. We love your TikToks. Come watch us.
And
Oh yeah, there's your plug. Go to
Yeah.
Hell's Dungeon.
Wait.
Be scared.
Hell's Dungeon, haunted house.
my son does all the haunted stories like I did when I was his age and Jenny. So
Hell yeah. That's
Weren't
awesome.
you saying that he was forcing his friends during online games to listen to us?
yes, he always pulls up our YouTube videos, and like when they're doing the online gaming, they listen to the stories and everything. Yeah.
That is awesome, man. That is so awesome.
So my most awesome nephew, I love you. Shout out to you too, Jazz.
Yeah, he's at his grandmother's house again.
That's okay.
I think he just stays over there because she don't make him do chores or nothing. That's the only thing.
Understandable. My grandma made me do chores. I still had to do chores when I went to grandma's house.
Well, he's looked out with that because Nathan's grandmother doesn't make him do chores. So.
Oh, I had to go on chores. I had to go on walks with Granny because she was a big walker. So like we would just go to the woods and walk for hours. Like I probably did more when I was with her sometimes than I did it.
That's not a bad thing.
No,
You got to
I
have
love it.
granny time.
That's about there's all to do around here is walk. So
I was the only kid that
beautiful
loved it enough to go like and stay with her frequently. Like as we got older, like for a while it was just me. And then instead of going to the woods all the time, I remember we were talking about the crow earlier. Actually, the first time I saw that was with her because it was her sister that always had that quote, and she'd heard about it, wanted to see the movie. So she took me to see it. It was a double feature at our local Flicker Palace. It was that and The Cowboy's Way with Kiefer Sutherland and Woody Harrelson. Like, it was like a double feature. So we sat and watched it. And then she watched The Crow in theaters another 2 times with me.
Oh, wow.
It's the same woman that saw Wayne's World with me in theaters 17 times because she thought it was so funny.
Nice.
Oh, that rocks.
My granny was awesome.
Yes, definitely. Ours was interesting.
You're actually inheriting some of her belongings because the books that I'm sending you to were the ones that I had specifically put aside in every printing, and I always saved one just for her, and she'd read them all too. So you're actually going to be getting her books.
I promise to take care of them as well as I'm taking care of all your other books.
You're good. She'll be happy that they went to a reader because she was a big reader.
Oh, yeah. I love anything book-wise and story-wise. It just took me forever to get to my high school dream of basically this and being published.
Oh, I feel that for sure. But also with that last story, man. So I'd been kicking around ideas for a while, and actually during Nano, I'm going to be writing the sequel where it picks up there at with Aaron and Lynn at Gene, in Lynn's mom's house. They're going to go on a family road trip with some other family members. And the whole concept right now is this is actually spreading through the whole family because it's like a backwoods type road trip. There's a lot of side roads and like country roads and stuff. There's all these stops they've got to make for bathroom breaks and gas and things like that. And one by one, my concept is the whole family is going to be replaced until only Aaron is driving the car and looking in the rearview mirror.
Nice.
So we'll see the neighbor pop up again that he's going to call the neighbor and get more information that he didn't want in the first story. And that's what I'm looking at doing right now for that one because it's one that a lot of people still talk about. So it's kind of that and Mr. Jones are the ones I think I hear still about the most from the old stories.
Mr. Jones is the one I've seen most done by creepypasta channel makers. Yeah.
That was Mr. Otis Gyrie, one of the most famous voice actors in the history of voice actors, actually did that story on one of his shows on the Chilling Tales Network. And like that was the day that I felt like I made it as a writer. Just hearing him of all people read that story was like the day for me. Like, oh my God.
Oh, nice.
He has so much gravitas when he speaks. Like just doing that it gives me chills, man. I go back and listen to it usually anytime I get down to my writing and down to myself real bad, I'll go back and listen to that. Like, no, Otis read your story, man. Like, you got something. You just got to tap into it again.
Oh yeah, and for those listening, it is linked to Rusty Slasher's page, a Mr. Jones graphic with a cabin in the back, and you'll find a link to his story, the actual episode it's on.
Yep, raztoslasher.com. If you go there, my website, there's a section specifically for media. Click that tab. Every story of mine that's ever been done from like narrators and podcast networks are all on there. And I want to get something also to put a link up there for you guys too. So I need to, because I'm going to be actually updating the website probably this week or the beginning of next week, because I have so many book links I have to update and things, and I was going to get some links from you guys to put some stuff up there.
Okay. Have y'all accomplished putting anything on Spotify yet?
I mean, I have in the past, but not recently.
Not recently.
We have not been able to do the subscription for the Spotify. That involves a monthly subscription.
It does and it doesn't. There's ways to get it on there and iTunes and everything else for free, but it's a pain in the ass. I've done it back with the Twisted Geekdom Network and podcast.
Wow.
But there is a subscription thing. It's pretty cheap when we can afford it. It'll just put it on all of it for us, and I think that's kind of what we're holding out for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just wondering because, like, some of my followers are on there. I could start sharing it on there too, like make it one of my lists.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, you could always add our playlist to your YouTube page.
Yeah. Because, well, see, most of my workout stuff and all that, they have, I make playlists for them and all that. So I was just wondering.
Yes, I found those on your TikTok page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, we are coming up on 2 hours, and we should probably work on signing off.
Yeah, because I'll never shut up otherwise.
Oh, I love talking with you. I love talking with you both. I just don't get to talk with you enough. But either way, I would like to thank everybody who came and everybody who will watch us in the future for giving us the time to listen to the stories. And please check us out more. If you'll please tell us where to find you, Sissy.
You can find me on Paramour Concubine on TikTok, and then Corpse Chronicles on YouTube, and then my Instagram and Spotify and Twitter and all that is under Paramount Concubine.
Okay, the Razzles.
You can find me at raztslasher.com and just Google me, man, because Jenny's got me in more places than I know exist, I'm sure. I'm about to start doing a little bit more with Slasher, because I do have a profile on Slasher. I'm still waiting for it to officially make its way to my my computer versus the phone, because I don't do my phone a lot. But I did just get Snapchat for the first time this week, and it's easy to find me. It's just type in Rasty Slasher. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing on it, I'm not going to lie. So
I have no idea either.
Don't expect a lot. You'll probably just get text messages instead of actual pictures, I guess, that I'm supposed to take, or videos. I'm still learning about all that with my crappy phone. So, but yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's done.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Find me Friday with the Blue Box on Friday with the Library in the Blue Box on Facebook is my page. Friday Blues Disorganized Library is my group. You can find me on Fae Corps. You can find me on Raztopia Slasher and Corpse Garden Chronicles. And leave a comment, and I'll either get you back to any of the people on there, or I'll answer it if you're there for me. But yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Bye.
Spending your